Hi, everybody. This is Anne-Marie Schubert. I am the Sacramento County District Attorney, and I am quite honestly honored today to be the moderator of what I call a Zoom cast with some of my colleagues throughout the state of California. So we have here today the District Attorney of Alameda County, Nancy O'Malley, the District Attorney of Los Angeles County, Jackie Lacey, the District Attorney of Santa Clara County, Jeff Rosen, and the District Attorney of San Diego County, Stephan. So Nancy, why don't we start with you, and if I can ask all of you to kind of give us a little bit of background about yourself and your county, and then we'll kind of launch into why we're doing the Zoomcast today.
Great, thank you so much, Anne-Marie, and thank you for everybody who's watching. My county is in Northern California. We are 1.7 million people. We've been involved in domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, human trafficking for a very long time. In fact, I was a rape crisis counselor volunteer when I was in college. And then I was very fortunate to join Alameda County DA's office, who actually was the first victim witness assistance program in the country. And I was proud to join an office that valued the voices of victims and made sure that we provided resources and education and support during the most critical times of their lives. So in my office, we also have a family justice center, which is very active, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I'm just really, really pleased to be here. Thank you.
All right, Nancy, thank you. How about you, Jackie Lacey from Los Angeles?
Well, I'm Jackie Lacey. I'm the District Attorney of Los Angeles County. We serve over 10 million residents, and our mission is to seek justice and also safeguarding crime victims' rights. And for many years, our office has been involved in the fight with in domestic violence. Right after the O.J. Simpson case, more than 20 years ago, our office opened up the Family Violence Unit. We now probably have more than 50 prosecutors who do those kinds of cases. We have an elder abuse section, we have a child abuse section, and we had a complex child abuse section that opened up as a result of the number of cases that we were seeing of children who were injured, and all we had was the medical expert to tell you how and why that happened. But I'm really proud to be part of this group this week. We're all worried about the virus and what impact it has on our community, but we're worried about our safety. And right now, while a lot has, in terms of criminal justice world, have been focused in on inmates, you also have some people who are in abusive homes right now where they're not able to get out, children who are not attending school, and women who may, or men who may not be able to see others. It's just the family that they see, and they may be actually locked inside a home with their abuser. And so I'm really glad that we're spending this time talking about victims. Because they can be the forgotten people in the midst of talking about improving the criminal justice system. So I really look forward to a really good, robust discussion about what everyone can do to help these very vulnerable victims and make sure that this abuse doesn't take place behind closed doors, and especially when you could prevent it by just making one phone call.
All right, thank you, Jackie. All right, Jeff Rosen from Santa Clara County.
Yes, my name is Jeff Rosen. I'm the District Attorney in Santa Clara County. I've been the DA here for about 9 years. Santa Clara County, our largest city, is San Jose. We're the heart of Silicon Valley. We have a population of almost 2 million people. It's a very diverse county. 40% of our residents were not born in the United States. Many different languages are spoken here, which creates challenges and opportunities in terms of dealing with a diverse group of crime victims. And I'm really pleased that we're going to spend this time talk a little bit about how all of us are trying to better serve crime victims during this COVID crisis. There has been a lot of focus on criminal defendants and the jails and what needs to be done to provide for public health in the jails and outside the jails. But I'm glad that we're going to have a discussion about what we're trying to do to protect crime victims and other vulnerable victims during this time.
Okay, Jeff Rosen, thank you so much. I really emphasize that your words, which is challenges present opportunities for us. So I think that's something that we're all looking at. Stephan from San Diego.
Hello, everyone. It's exciting to be with such a great group. I'm the baby of the group, not by age, for sure, but by number of years that I've been the DA, a couple of years, but I've been a prosecutor for more than I've been alive, not a prosecutor, about 30 years. And it's been an honor every day to wake up and fight for justice. And it's an honor as district attorney because you're able to set those wider policies to fight for the community, for everybody to feel safe. And this is such an extraordinary time. And it's a time where we know that our communities really need us. They need us to be at our best so that we can continue to protect the most vulnerable. And that's what we're doing here in San Diego. I have about 1,000 employees, 1120 to be exact, and they are facing their own challenges in their own families, but they're waking up and continuing our mission to serve the 3.3 million people here in San Diego County. And I'm proud of what we're doing, but what's really great is the collaboration and learning from all of these other elected district attorneys and borrowing ideas so that our service is at its best.
All right, well, thank you so much, Summer, for that. I'm just thrilled to have all of you here. So the purpose of this Zoomcast really is to kind of come together as a group of elected DAs from across the state. Obviously, we all have the same mission, which is to protect public safety. And right now with this pandemic, and particularly because of stay-at-home orders, all of us have been at the forefront of being concerned about the health and well-being of our constituents. And that, in particular today, we want to talk about things like domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse, sexual assault. This week marks Denim Day, which is this Wednesday, which is hopefully the day we're going to be releasing this podcast. But today we want to just take a few minutes to kind of talk about the innovative ideas that everybody is bringing out because of this pandemic, but is really trying to serve our communities in a different way. So I'm going to start with Nancy O'Malley. I know Nancy, for those of you that don't know, is not only the District Attorney of Alameda County, but she also is the president of the California District Attorneys Association. So Nancy, maybe you can start us off with what's happening with CDAA and Alameda County.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I want to say that the California District Attorney's Office is made up of over 3,000 prosecutors across California, all of whom are dedicated to justice and to ensuring that victims have a voice in the criminal justice system. The organization was formed in 1974, and it has been at the forefront of enhancing victims' rights and victims' voices. And this is critically important at times like this, where there is a lot of attention on how we're balancing the rights of the defendants in this time of crisis and pandemic, but without missing out on or not hearing the voices of victims. And that's important. Every prosecutor in this state is focusing on not only ensuring the rights of the defendants, for sure, but making sure that victims are not left out of the conversation. The issues that we're talking about today, which would be the interpersonal violence crimes that we know happen behind closed doors, it is an issue for every prosecutor in the state. So while you have 5 of us here representing different counties, I'm speaking and we're all speaking for all of our colleagues across the state to say that we are here for victims of crime. We are open, we're working hard, and we will make sure that where we can help, we will.
So Nancy, can you tell us a little bit from the perspective of Alameda County of some of the kinds of things that you're doing within your county to kind of serve the needs of victims?
Yes, happy to. So as I said at the beginning that we have family justice centers here in the county, and I also have my entire victim witness staff working. So on domestic violence, because we're all seeing a downturn in the calls for help, which we know is because many crimes are happening behind closed doors, and it's likely that many people who are being victimized don't have access to a phone or to a way to get the word out or to get call for help. So what my victim witness staff and my family justice center staff are doing is we're calling all the victims that we've worked with in the past, not just ones that have active cases going, but victims that came to the Justice Center a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, just checking in to see what they need, if they're safe, do they need any help. I will tell you that we've had over 200 requests to relocate out of a house because they are sheltered in place with the abuser for many of them. We're also very concerned about their children. And at our Family Justice Center and through our other programs, we do a lot of work with children who witness domestic violence to make sure that they don't have to grow up and repeat the same life that their parent does, either as a victim or a perpetrator. So that's an important thing we're doing with domestic violence. We also have created a electronic medical record. We call it DVRR, which is Domestic Violence Reporting and Referral. And that is when somebody, a victim of domestic violence, goes to the emergency room for help, there's a medical record that the healthcare provider will follow and be able to log in injuries. And included in that is a risk assessment tool, which has become very vital because that tells us whether somebody is safe if they return back to their home. And we're continuing to get referrals through that will be followed up by the navigators from the Family Justice Center. I also do want to talk about sexual assault, though, because while we're seeing fewer reports being made, that we know that we still have reports of sexual assault happening. And there's a couple of things about that. First of all, we really are encouraging victims in the community through our media outreach, through our social messaging, that if somebody is a victim of sexual assault crime, that we urge them to go to the hospital both for a forensic exam, but more importantly for a health exam. In this time of COVID and being sexually assaulted and victimized in that way, we want to make sure that people have the immediate medical care that they can receive to be able to stay safe and healthy. There's some activity going on the YouTube, and there's some marketers that are marketing this do-it-yourself forensic evidence kit to do at home. This is not good. These are scams because, first of all, those forensic evidence kits are not valid, number one. Number two, the dynamic and the help that a sexual assault survivor gets when she or he goes to the sexual assault response center is invaluable. We know the trauma that is associated with that type of violence. We have trained professionals who are there to help them work through that initial trauma and then to link in to have ongoing support. We have trained forensic examiners who know what they're doing. They know not only how to gather evidence if there is any, but more importantly, they're looking to make sure there's no internal injury or other injuries that need to be addressed. So we're really urging people to, if something happens, if somebody becomes a victim of sexual assault, please reach out to the healthcare, go to the hospital, call the police. It doesn't mean people have to come and testify in court. It just means we want everyone to be healthy and to be safe and to be protected. Another issue that we're seeing here in Alameda County is with human trafficking, particularly commercial sex trafficking of minors. This is a problem across the country. And for many years, my office has been working in this area, and I particularly have made this one of the highest priorities of my administration. What we know is that there's still many children that are being lured into sex trafficking by the trafficker. Some are coercive, but some of it is just involving force. And these youth are visible. They're on the street. They're on the internet. We track the internet ads, and I will tell you that in one day, one 24-hour period, in the city of Oakland, ads for sex, paid sex with a minor, was over 870 ads in one 24-hour period. So we've put together a task force because we know that these kids are on the street by being forced on the street. We know they're forced on the internet. We know that they're having encounters, which is, from a public health perspective, it's unimaginable the danger and the risk that these people are being put into. And so we are reaching out to people. We have a task force. We have advocates working with us. We have everyone, all hands on deck, to do what we can to separate these children away from these traffickers and to stop exposing them to these public health risks, and particularly COVID-19, and then to get them resources, get them into a safe place, get them clothing, get them food, get them support, get them counseling, all of the things that we would do to try to help them. And I think this is critically important because a lot of people in the community know the term human trafficking, and people can say that, but there's so much more behind the term human trafficking are people who are being exploited and trafficked and put in the gravest danger. So those are some of the things that we're doing to make sure that We are reaching out to the people who need us the most, and who are the most vulnerable right now during this time of shelter in place and other health issues.
All right, Nancy, thank you. Lots of incredible stuff happening in Alameda County. Jackie, I'm going to switch to you now. I think all of us on this Zoomcast know that you have been really an extraordinary leader, especially when it comes to mental health issues in our communities. Right now, we all know that the stress and anxiety of these stay-at-home orders and the crisis is really impacting our communities. So maybe you can kind of tell us what's happening in Los Angeles County. I know you have a campaign called Behind Closed Door. If you can kind of just tell us what's going on in Los Angeles County.
Yeah, so because the jury trials are not going, we have thought about how can we best use this time to serve our community. So I have 200 victim services representatives. We doubled the number of victim service representatives. And like Nancy, we're contacting victims, we're talking to them, and they're terrified, they're scared. You know, in some cases, the abuser is getting out of jail and going right back to that home, right? And there are victims who are very worried. There are people that most of our victims are poor, they need services, so we're making sure that they're able to apply for restitution orders, protective orders. We're working on those type of things, and we're having to do that all with knowing the public isn't even allowed in to court, and just getting those things done. But the Behind the Closed Doors project, it was a very innovative project. It was an example of the public-private getting together, public and private industry getting together. Mike Fuhrer, who's my city attorney of Los Angeles, we were approached by the Grocers Association, and they said, hey, can we partner? We've heard that domestic violence is occurring behind closed doors. Everybody is now having to go to the grocery store, you know, deliveries are limited. And this is an opportunity that if someone is being abused, they can report it. They'll know how to report it. They'll post posters. We've got posters out in almost every grocery store here in LA County. But also it's to remind people to check on children who are not going to be in school, as I mentioned before, but those seniors who are just trapped in, and when I say trapped, I mean they can't leave. They're in the convalescent homes, and they may be being abused. I know the workers are shorthanded there. They may be short-tempered during this crisis. And we wanted to put it on people's minds that if you have a relative or a friend who's in one of these homes, or a senior who may be living with someone who abuses them, that you need to check on them. So Behind Closed Doors is hashtag Behind Closed Doors. That's our campaign. We've got all these posters out with the phone number of where to call if you suspect certain types of abuse. Mm-hmm. But also it is to remind people that the cops can't do it alone. Cops cannot apprehend basically criminals who abuse others of their home, because a lot of times it takes place behind closed doors. That it's up to the entire public to be aware, to watch. I mean, I'm sure you've had this experience recently where you've been walking in your neighborhood and maybe you haven't seen a senior out, because everybody's walking now, right? And maybe there's someone in your block who you haven't seen lately, and you wondered, hey, what's going on? Are they all right? Are they sick? Are they in need of something? It's that same thing, but exponentially expanded to the whole county. Let's check on people who may need us to check on them. Even the sheriff, our LA County sheriff, is doing welfare checks on children now with, I think, the probation department. But Behind Closed Doors is to raise our awareness about it's our responsibility, it's all of our responsibility to look after one another, but also to remind people that while it may be peaceful behind your closed door, it may not be that way 2 doors over, and you've got to really get involved. You know, I can't talk about domestic violence without thinking about my own personal family history. My mother was the oldest of 14 kids raised in a small town right outside of Augusta, Georgia. And her father was an alcoholic. My grandfather was an alcoholic and an abuser. And he routinely abused my grandmother physically. When my mother got to be 17, she decided she would call the police. And the police came out. And this was in the early 50s, right? And talked to everybody involved. And they told my grandparents, you better send this girl away. She means trouble. And this was because she reported domestic violence. And that's how my mother, they sold a bull, and with the proceeds, they put my mother on a train, and she ended up out here in California. But if you can imagine, I was raised in a home by mother and father, and my mother was just, she hated abusers because she lived in a home with an abuser. And she taught my sister and I, too, that somebody has to speak up. Somebody has to get in there and get involved. And I've always said that, you know, when you have somebody who's mean enough to abuse their intimate partner, a child, a senior, or an animal for that matter, you really have someone with a dark, evil heart, and you have got to do what you can to make sure that that person is, as that issue is addressed, because then they'll not only hurt this person, but they'll hurt others. So behind closed doors, you know, I pay tribute to my mother and grandmother who lived in that situation, but it's a reminder that a lot can happen behind closed doors, that just because it seems quiet right now doesn't mean that crime isn't occurring. And the numbers, in and of themselves, the numbers suggest something is going on and it isn't reported. There's no way that we have suddenly experienced a drop in violence in our community, that these things are happening, and people should know the DA's office is open. We've been open all but about 3 days, even though the courthouses are closed to the public. We're working every single day to make sure that victims get justice, and that we do what we can to help our community stay safe.
All right. Thank you, Jackie, and thank you for the personal story as well. Jeff Rosen from Santa Clara County.
So thank you so much, Anne Marie. One of the first things that we realized we had to do in order to take care of our community was to make sure that we preserve the organizational structure of our office, the hierarchy, the connections that all the different teams have. And in this, we were fortunate in that about 3 years ago, the power went out in our main office with 10 minutes notice to all of us. And we had to very quickly relocate over to our crime laboratory and contact everyone in the office and make sure that everybody was equipped with laptops that worked remotely. And that whole experience where we were camped out for a week, working out of a large room in the crime lab, helped prepare us for this situation where literally on Sunday afternoon, we got the word from our public health doctor that the next day, really, so many things were going to be shut down in our county. And so we had the experience of being able to work remotely, to have our attorneys and our staff have computers that connect to our different databases. And then we realized that we needed a way to communicate with one another, because only about 20% of our staff is in the buildings on any one day. The other 80% are working remotely from home. So every day there's a daily update that I put out that goes to the whole staff of 650 people. It's a mix of inspirational messages, court operations, successes we've had in court, good things that people are still continuing to do in the community for our community, and selfies of people working at home and their children spilling something on their computer. So this has enabled us to kind of feel still connected to one another and share in the successes and the trials and the tribulations of what we're going through. The second thing I would say is our county is very diverse. In Santa Clara County, about 35% of our population is Asian American. And very quickly after the COVID-19 crisis began, there was an uptick in hate incidents, verbal incidents against Asian Americans in our community. And so within a few days, we were able to put out a video public service announcement. It's about 55 seconds long. And it has prosecutors from our office who are Chinese, African American, Italian, Hispanic, Jewish, to talk about very simply, this is not a Chinese virus, this is not an Italian virus. When you attack someone because of where you think they're from or what they look like, then you're really attacking all of us. And we put this out very quickly, and we're very fortunate to have gotten some good play with different television stations carried it. But we were trying to say, to remind our community of the values and bonds that we have here, of treating everybody fairly and with respect. We were trying to send a message to potential perpetrators that we take this crime very seriously. We will prosecute it vigorously. And then, of course, we were trying to send a message to victims to try to make them feel empowered to report these crimes, because we know hate crimes are underreported. There's a sense of shame that many victims feel. And we were trying to say, report this crime, we will take it seriously. And even when a hate incident doesn't rise to the level of a crime, we still want the victims to report that to law enforcement. Why? Because the police do then do an investigation. They talk to that perpetrator. And even if we're not filing charges against that perpetrator because of the conduct, because it doesn't rise to the level of a crime, we're still sending the message to that perpetrator that this is not acceptable in our community. So, unfortunately, there is a hate crime case that we have filed charges on, that we prosecuted for someone that was threatening to kill a Vietnamese couple in a grocery store. And it's a case that we're vigorously prosecuting. I would say a couple words about domestic violence. I agree with everything that my colleagues from Los Angeles and Alameda County have said. One of the things that we have seen is that while property crime has gone down in our county compared to where we were last year at this time, domestic violence has remained constant, and 911 calls for family disturbances have increased. So we know that there's violence that's happening behind closed doors, and we're trying to address it as best we can. The last thing I would say is that, being the DA in Silicon Valley, we try to, as best we can, be up to date on the latest technologies. So one of the things that we're in the process of developing, we were very fortunate to get a state grant, was to develop a victim app, an app for crime victims that would tell them the status of their case, Marcy's Law, frequently asked questions about the criminal process, the status of their offender, whether that offender was in custody or had been released, the status of their claim for victim compensation, and a way of being able to chat real time with a victim advocate or the prosecutor on their case. So it's in the development stage. We're a few months away from being able to roll it out, but it's definitely something that, while we vigorously protect intellectual property in our county, this is something that we're going to make available to whoever would like to use it. But we're trying to figure out ways to connect with victims. And by the way, this is an app that we know that perpetrators look at their victims' phones. So we're very aware of creating an app that will be disguised. It will not say crime victim app. It will say something that is innocuous and will not make a perpetrator think it's something that they should be concerned about. So we're working on that, and we hope to keep our staff together and working hard while this happens. Thank you.
All right, Jeff. Well, thanks for that. I'm sure that all of us across California are going to look forward to that app when it's finally developed, because I'm sure we're going to want to borrow it if we can. All right. Okay. San Diego DA Summer Stephan, if you can kind of tell us what's happening in San Diego.
Well, San Diego County, I would say that necessity is the mother of invention, and we really see that. And this time we really needed to be innovative, to transform in a couple of weeks all of our services so that we can actually serve victims and prosecute criminals and prevent crime in a different way than we've done before. And because of technology, we've been able to really do that, and we've been able to convert a lot of our processes to online processes using different web apps and the like. And it's been amazing to see the way we can adapt when people are determined to get a job done, seeing the team adapt so that we have these virtual hearings in court, because we have timelines. And if we don't meet those timelines, we had some major sex offenders and traffickers and abusers that we needed to meet that timeline so that they don't get released. One of the big things for us that we're seeing around the country, that our seniors are the ones that sadly are at the highest risk for COVID-19. And we see that a lot of the deaths really are coming from senior homes and senior facilities. And in my mind, as a prosecutor, I can't help but think that this is a little bit of a natural progression to how high their vulnerability is. And so we've been focused on that, focused on letting our community know that it's really critical that they reach out more often and that they don't take no for an answer. Even if they can't visit their loved one, they should be able to insist on having a FaceTime where they lay eyes on and they see and they're able to observe whether there's been any bruising, anything, a look in the eyes. We all know as prosecutors that there is absolutely nothing like looking in the eyes of a victim of a traumatic crime. It tells the story. It's not what's coming out of their mouth. It is what you see when you look at them, where you know there's a story behind the story, behind the story. And especially when it comes to abusers that are known to victims. You know, our communities are all ready to act when they hear about a stranger pulling a child off the street. You see people, you know, on alert, ready to help that victim. But when crimes are committed by someone who's known to the victim, whether it's domestic violence, sexual abuse, child abuse, elder abuse, which is often by a known perpetrator, that is when the community relaxes. They're not as vigilant. And at this time, I think this is a time when we are all trying to make our community realize that what is happening behind closed doors, closed facilities, it is on us to make sure that it is brought out into the light. We've reinforced all our resources, made sure that our shelters are able to, if they're not able to safely distance victims, that there are hotel vouchers, other ways to make sure that our victims are housed in a way that is decent and that is compassionate. We've been able to bring additional resources to this fight, working with the county, updating a new site, Prevent TV 1 and Prevent TV 2. What's interesting about Prevent TV 2, it's really intended for the perpetrators, not for those hardened that are wired to be violent, but those that have lost a job and see that their temper is getting out of hand, a way to actually get those trauma services and stay away from that becoming an abuser. That's really, really important. One of the most probably for me disturbing trends is that we're seeing a third of what we used to have to the child abuse reporting hotline. And we know that child abuse is continuing, but because kids aren't going to school where teachers and counselors are looking at them, and that statistic of 2/3 less reports is matched with the increase in what we're seeing in the internet crimes against children. We are seeing that pornographic images of children are exploding, which means that unfortunately homemade movies are being made more often at home with the abuser, with the children as sitting ducks. So we've taken on the effort with the superintendent of schools to make sure that teachers are making sure their kids are watching and are learning, and that they're actually looking at their kids for signs of depression use and they're acting. So we're still performing our mission, but we're just doing it in a different way, in an innovative way. And I do think the plus side is we're learning a lot of lessons that we can take into the future.
Wow, that's a lot of good stuff, Summer. So one of the things, just before we kind of end this part, and then we're going to invite Patti Giggans into our Zoomcast. But Jackie, your behind closed door campaign, quite honestly, has really become what I believe is the benchmark for the rest of California. And I know Nancy's, this whole public awareness campaign, everybody's talking about it. But Nancy, maybe you can kind of mention it, from the CDAA perspective of why that was such an important campaign and is becoming an important campaign.
Well, what all of the district attorneys in the state are having the same conversation, and we all have the same concerns about what's happening with people sheltered in place. And as DA Rosen said, that we've had the task of balancing the rights of an accused, of the unique circumstances and protocols that we're following in this time of COVID, but more importantly, of making sure that we are focusing on victims, and not just victims that are calling for help, but victims who we don't see. So we have, as an organization, CDAA, we have reached out and working with the California Grocers Association. They're wonderful partners for us because all the grocery stores are members of the association. So we had from Sacramento County with DA Anne-Marie Schubert's team created a flyer, and we were able to turn that into a template. And now we have, I think we have 15 different counties that I've submitted the template with their resource numbers on it for that particular county, with messaging from that particular county. And then our partners at the California Grocers Association are working with the locals, just as DA Jackie Lacey said that they're in the grocery stores in LA County. Well, now they're in grocery stores all across California, because people are going to the grocery store. Everybody's paying attention. And they're very clear. And it isn't just for victims to understand that there is a help for them, there is help, but it's for people who walk down the street and live 2 doors down, people that have loved ones that they suspect something's going on. So the resource numbers are really valuable to be able to alert somebody that something may be going on. It may not, but at least we have eyes and we are able to check on people in that regard. And I think from a California District Attorneys Association, it's a proud step and an important initiative that we're all engaging in. And the last thing I'll say from CDAA's perspective is that for anyone watching that your prosecutors in your county are working very hard. Some people think that the government's shut down or the courts aren't working. The truth is we're all still working, and we're open for all of the victims and for all the business that we need to do during this time. We're doing it, and we have a new way of doing business, but we're there to help, and we're there to speak for victims of crime.